Why do people not evacuate during a major weather event like Hurricane Helene? In addition to the resources issue other people have mentioned, hurricanes are big. You have to leave several days before in order to outrun it. You can't just go to the next state over. It will cover multiple states. In fact, in order to safely evacuate, you have to leave before you're sure it will even hit you. It's still far enough away it might turn and miss you, or worse, turn into your new path. I live in New Orleans. When Francine hit, most of us stayed, but one person evac to another state. Her hotel in the new state, even though it was supposed to be completely safe, ended up getting more flooded than her house here. Meanwhile, I stayed through it and never lost power, and none of my local streets flooded at all. Now consider that we have several of these events per year, and we never know which ones are going to hit us dead out 200 miles away, or not come near us until it's too late. After all, no one here in New Orleans is evacuating from Helene, and no one in Georgia evacuated from Francine. But both of those storms could hit those states. Also, it might gain power and speed, and catch up with you on the way to where you're going, or lose power and speed and just be a normal tropical storm when it hits. That can happen in under a day. It's not free to leave town, man. You try going on a week-long vacation with 1 week's notice. Lack of resources with which to evacuate. So a few years ago, my wife and I moved to Virginian coast from Southern California. When the first hurricane was coming our way, we took off to NJ to stay with family. When we came back and asked how it was of the people who stayed behind, they shrugged and said a few small branches fell down. You see, the hurricane that seemed like it was heading exactly for us 2 days prior actually missed our location quite heavily by the time it got far enough north. That's the gist of it. Prior experience of sacrificing a lot of personal time and discomfort only to find out that it was wholly unnecessary. If hurricane path prediction models were more exact, maybe more people would leave. As it is, you have to stay put until it's pretty darn close before knowing if you need to go or not, and by that time you're risking being stuck on the road as it gets to you due to everyone else trying to flee it. I think it is up to 30 now, but you need to look into how they actually died. Some were because they did stupid things. Some were just accidents that could have happened during any storm. One death was a person in a car and a sign fell on them. One died when a tree fell on their home. One was an emergency worker. 2 died due to a tornado. Some of the deaths aren't in Florida. I don't know the others. I live in FLA. I did evacuate when I lived in an evac zone, and Hurricane Charlie followed me to Orlando. No food, no water, no gas, nowhere to stay more than 1 night. Bumper to bumper, panicking people in cars. One car ahead of me panicked, went onto the emergency lane of a bridge, and destroyed 3 other cars. My cat pooped in the car and we were stuck in traffic for hours. The only one happy was our dog, who thought it was the best adventure ever. When Charlie hit us at the Fleabag Hotel, we were lucky enough to find W pets. We were miserable. In the morning, we were thankful to be alive. I was 5 months pregnant at the time. When I returned home, I found out that Charlie completely missed our home area. Not a single drop of rain. Go figure. Evacuating is its own special form of hell. If you stay, it could be hard. If you go, it might not be any better. Either way, it's a gamble. And to go to a shelter 1-2 times every year? Screw that. I've since moved to a non-evac zone in FLA, 63 feet above sea level. FLA AVG is 6 ft above sea level. My house is now the evac shelter. I'm staying put. My uncle works for the water department and isn't allowed to. Critical infrastructure. No money, no car, nowhere to go. Agoraphobia. When I lived in Houston and I came through, I still had to go to work. You live in the upper Midwest. How often do you go to the basement for a tornado warning? There are a lot of reasons, I think. People don't always believe the storm is as bad as people say it will be. And they have survived a lot of storms. What is one more? And it is a lot of work to pack up and find a shelter, etc., etc. And then there's money. It costs a lot of money to travel out of the storm's path. Even if there are free shelters, you have to get to them. And then there is pets. Most shelters don't take pets. Can you imagine what a shelter would be like if everyone brought their dogs, cats, birds, hamsters, and reptiles? But this means that if you can't afford a pet-friendly hotel, if you can even find a room, then you have to abandon your pet to the storm, which can be certain death for some pets. At least if you are with them, you can feed them and hopefully grab them before the 2 of you float away. If you want to see an example of evacuations gone wrong, Hurricane Rita. It came through Houston shortly after Katrina, so everyone panicked and got on the roads. The roads turned into parking lots and nobody got anywhere. Cars dead on packed highways, running out of gas because they weren't bringing in trucks to refuel before a storm. Towns along the major evac routes were trashed as the hordes of people, many of which weren't even in evac zones, but feared the worst after Katrina's devastation, came through and treated the stopping points as trash dumps and campgrounds. If you don't like where you live, just move. Yeah, that's not free. Also, if you live in an area that is used to hurricanes, they more often than not turn into something manageable, so it's not worth uprooting your entire lives for. I think some people have trouble accepting that they have no control over the situation. My experience has been mostly with people who don't evacuate during a wildfire. They decide to stay in an attempt to protect their homes. Honest to God, I've seen people refuse to evacuate with a brush fire fueled by 70-80 mph winds headed their way. The embers can travel in the wind. The news crews were filming this one guy who was late 50s, early 60s, standing outside his house with a garden hose. Now, I don't know anything about this man, but I am absolutely certain that he cannot run 80 mph. When the news crew finally had to evacuate, they managed to persuade him to get in the van with them and go. He wasn't happy about it, but I'm sure they told him that he could not outrun the fire and he was going to die if he didn't leave with them. Imagine having to convince a grown man that he can't run faster than a 80 mph fire. Some folks quite simply do not have the means or transportation options. Money. You need money to travel to safety. When we're young, we're broke and don't have fuck all anyway, so may as well party. When we're old, we never attain fuck all and we're going to die anyway, may as well party. For me, it would be my pets. I cannot stomach the idea of them starving or drowning, but I couldn't take them with me. Even if everyone decided to up and evacuate, it just is simply not possible logistically speaking. The sheer amount of people could not be accommodated in terms of shelter. They would have to leave their animals behind. It would also result in immense levels of traffic that might harm people further if they get stuck in their cars as the hurricane hits. There are so many more factors beyond these ones. I would have to write an essay to explain the nuances of it. I recommend reading about the days leading up to Hurricane Katrina to get more insight into the perspective of those who live in these hurricane-prone areas. I'm from New Orleans, and I have never evacuated from a hurricane. My mom and I tried to evacuate once during Katrina, but we almost got stuck in traffic and were forced to turn around. A lot of people have nowhere to go, no money to book an emergency hotel at the moment. Others are also evacuating, and a boss telling them they have to be in tomorrow or else they are fired.